What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. Today's guest is a partner at the Rockwell Group who leads design studios in the firm's New York and Madrid offices. He has combined strengths in architecture and interior design. He takes on new and unfamiliar typologies beyond hotels and restaurants and approaches them from a hospitality point of view. He has a diverse project portfolio, which enables him and his design teams to create innovative and holistic solutions for their clients. Ladies and gentlemen, Greg Keffer. Welcome, Greg.
Hi, Dan. Excited to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. And actually, I know in the intro, just as far as using unfamiliar typologies to help your clients kind of achieve whatever they want to achieve, because your projects are so varied. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I find so amazing about Rockwell Group is that it's not just that you're doing interior design. You're doing stage, you have a lab, you have all these things. It's almost like, and whenever I go there, it's like a laboratory of just like taking some of the craziest things and pushing the envelopes and coming up with like really boundary shifting outcomes on all of your projects. And so I'm going to frame it up with that one. But also the other amazing thing I find about Rockwell Group, I know you've been there for almost 11 years now, but there are so many people who work at Rockwell Group, leave, and then come back. And I'm just always amazed by that boomerang effect, or just the inspiration, or they go out and see, and like, there's not very many companies in our world that have that boomerang effect. I'm like, what do you think that's all about?
Yeah, I think you know what makes Rockwell special is that sort of diversity of project types you work on, but also, you know, I come to work every day and I'm surrounded by people that think different than I think, right? And that challenge me. And I think that's what's exciting. You know, when you work in a fairly traditional firm, it might be surrounded by people that are very similar to you. And so here, we not only have architects and interior designers, but we have product designers, industrial designers, we have theater designers, we have technology people, we have artists, you know, so it's a really diverse group. And sometimes we like to call ourselves the misfits in some ways. You know, we're not the typical stereotypical designers. So for us, it's just a really exciting mix. And I think how that then gets applied to projects is what makes our work interesting and as well, which is, you know, while we have a hospitality point of view, which is really about the human experience at the end of the day, I think being able to work on a train station or a museum or a theater, as well as hotels and restaurants and workspaces and all these other things. You not only are sort of applying this lens of hospitality on these different typologies, but it also allows you to sort of cross-pollinate things in ways that maybe if you're only doing one typology, you don't really kind of get those influences. So that's to me when it gets most exciting, when you start to see things merge together and kind of create new typologies and new ways to experience things.
One of the typologies you didn't mention, which I loved, and I would bring my kids there, is a playground or playgrounds. Yeah. I forgot if you did the one down by the seaport, but it was
playground. Yeah,
it was amazing. Like and I feel like you have all of these different silos that kind of cross-pollinate and inspire, and really, and then you have your like from the industrial and the product and technology design in your labs. It's almost like you have your own skunk works that kind of informs and implies, and so you're always kind of on the cutting edge, and then winning Emmys and Oscars, and I don't know, just being a part of all that from on the stage side. It just seems like, I don't know, like a designer's dream.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting. I think, you know, I think at the end of the day, you know, the playground, all these things, the commonality is that it's real life experiences that connect people, right? And I think that's a super important thing with all of our work. And so, you know, like the Imagination Playground was really an internal idea that, you know, started being played with as a product, and then ultimately launched as a company. And super interesting, you know, the idea of play and how do people play together. So I think, those kind of things are what's to me exciting about coming to work every day.
And for those of you who don't know, the imagination playground, imagine a playground. Okay. So there's like some structures, there's some rubberized floor maybe, but there's all these blue blocks and shapes that the kids, or I guess grown-ups or parents, can go in there and just, you're not limited to by whatever the structure is. You basically can create and break down your own structures, and it allows the little ones to be the designers and the architects and the builders. It's super awesome.
I think it teaches not only creativity and enforces imagination, but it's also about collaboration. So oftentimes you'll see these kids together building something, right? And they figure out together, like, how are they gonna make this structure that's huge, and so I think there's some really key ideas that, if you're just singularly playing with blocks, small blocks, is different. But when you're in a large setting, group setting with these giant blocks, it's an interesting learning opportunity, I think.
Well, then I also loved how you said it's like, it's obviously bringing people together. So and also that we can learn so much from children, right? Because I don't know, like, they're just so pure in like their creative output and like what they want to do and how they're gonna go ahead and what they're gonna build and how they're gonna collaborate.
Yeah.
And through all these different channels that you guys have at Rockwell Group, I love how you're saying the one thing that kind of ties them all together is this hospitality point of view. And the more of these conversations that I have with people, the more, especially at larger firms, everyone is realizing the value of hospitality, because
Sure.
it's really, like you said, it's all about those people and how they experience things. So if we think about that hospitality point of view throughout all of your guys' studios, like, how do you guys in all the different studios define what hospitality is?
I think hospitality, right now it's a crazy world, right? There's a lot of stresses going on in the world, whether it be war or bigotry or whatever, all these, and it's ultimately pulling everybody apart in a lot of ways. And I think, to me, the true reason hospitality exists is to bring people back together. And I think we need spaces and places and something that is a common bond between people. And I think that's to me what's exciting about the world we are able to practice in, because we're uniting people, and hopefully maybe bringing some people back together that have been torn apart by all this craziness.
Yeah. So when you think about the idea of bringing everyone together, like, so let's just pretend you're working on a new project, right? And maybe it's not in the traditional hospitality studio. Maybe it's stage. I don't know. It's something. It's a playground. Who knows? How do you guys kick off the idea of what is this point of view? How are we going to bring these people together? Like, how do you start talking about that on every single project?
I think the first thing is we want to kind of understand, who are we designing it for, right? And what do they need? What do they desire? What do they feel? And sort of have empathy for that in some ways to kind of, how do you create a space that supports what's going to excite them the most? Every project is different. We always also do a lot of research up front. Every project we have is narrative driven. So we really like to do the research up front and build a story. And from that story, start to articulate the design. So I think, it's ultimately, it's about them. And every project we do looks different. And that's the reason for that is that we don't have a set style. We don't, it's really reflective of the need of that project and the users of that project.
And when you think about the needs of all the different stakeholders in a project, how do you know, after you've developed the narrative and you've presented it to the client, and either at that presentation part or at the end, how do you know when it just resonates and you've hit it out of the park?
Let's see. I guess, I don't know if you ever know, other than, when you have a restaurant and it's impossible to get a table at, then, okay, something struck there, right? I will say, like, when I look back, kind of at certain moments in my career and kind of understanding, when did you kind of hit a spark, right? There's certain projects that stick out maybe, but I don't know that you knew it when you're in it until you're kind of out of it, to kind of look
Mhm.
back on it, right, and see how it maybe influenced future work or whatever it might have been. But that's always fun to kind of look backwards.
Okay, so I love that you use the word spark, and also looking backwards. So if you were to look back through your portfolio of that you're working on, or your teams are working on, like what's a recent or a past one that where that spark really just like turned into a flame, and
Sure.
like you just really, like, it just checked all the boxes, and you're like, wow, I wish
Yeah.
every project could be like that.
You know, probably looking back, I think one of the big ones was Neue House, the very first one here in New York, and it was a co-working space, still is, for creative types. But it was back then, it was a sort of a new typology that was really about not only kind of the WeWorks, but also the Soho houses, and how do you kind of combine them into this social space as well as a workspace. And I think that kind of, at that moment in time, it was when we were really kind of aware of this blurring of boundaries between typologies, and starting to really kind of dabble in that more as a firm. And I think it just kind of was this perfect opportunity that we were helping to shape what the vision of the business was, as well as designing it. And when you're in it, it was a challenging process. It was a challenging project to hit budget wise and all that stuff. But then at the end, you're like, it created something really dynamic and special. And I think got a lot of notice out there in the world. And I think it also just became a very apparent moment of like how when you take different typologies and bring them together, you get something really unique out of it. So that was an exciting one. I think also I look back at like doing Union Square Cafe for Danny Meyer. Like that was exciting because it was something that was so iconic in the city, and how do you take that to a new place and not screw it up, um,
Okay, so let's look at those two things. So one is you're blurring the lines between typology of workspace and hospitality, and just countless other things. There's entertainment, because obviously there's stages, there's performance, there's light, there's AV. Okay, so you're really mashing everything together and coming up with something really new and exciting. And I was a member there, and I loved it. I mean, it was such a great place to meet people and to go have quiet time and
right.
breakouts and entertain. Then on the other side, the idea of, and the weight and gravity of having a project, and without the fear of wanting to fuck it up, if you will, with Union Square Cafe, because that place, I mean, it's such a part of, and you're on Union Square, your offices are on Union Square. And when that put its flag down and it transformed that whole freaking neighborhood. And he does that with a lot of his places, but like there's one where you're braving new ground, you're trailblazing, and then the other where it's like, oh, don't mess this up. Don't mess this up. How do you do it? Like those are two super different mindsets.
Yeah. No, that's what makes it exciting, right? I think with Union Square Cafe, it was Danny's first restaurant he ever opened, right? And so for him, it was a very personal thing too. And so, and obviously, I have a lot of respect for Danny and what he's built, but at the same time, he didn't want to do just a carbon copy of what he had, right? Because that would fall flat. So how do you take the basic elements that made the original so great, and how do you make it something new and fresh and but at the same time feels familiar, right? And so there was little things we did, with, I don't know, the bar was the exact same length of the bar that was in the original. So dimensionality and scale were really important. His art collection that was in the original, we found places for all the art in the new one. So all these kind of things help to kind of craft the story, but at the same time feels fresh and relevant today, I think.
And then if you think about from the Neue House experience, where it's this great mashup, and you've created this new kind of workspace environment. Okay. I think a lot of that has to do with your vision as a designer, and also feedback with ownership, like getting it to be just as you want. But I would think that your outlook and insights really help shape that tremendously. And on Union Square Cafe, it's awesome. It pays homage to, but it is different but on that side, you know, Danny Meyer has such a vision of what he wants. Like, how you're kind of blazing a new path over here and then over here. Like, how do you find that balance with someone like Danny? So you're really pushing the envelope as you guys do at Rockwell, but also, you know, you have to yield to Danny's uncompromising vision as well.
Danny's really easy to work with, to be honest. Like, I think he has a lot of trust in working with us. And, you know, he obviously brings a vision to the table, but at the same time, he's not micromanaging, he's not over controlling, he's open to new ideas. But at the same time, you know, we went into it with a lot of respect for, you know, the heritage and the iconic nature of the project. At the same time, you know, while we're doing that, we have the little he called it a gift to the neighborhood of daily provisions, which was it's a great little coffee shop kind of backdoor space. And so at the same time we're doing something that's kind of legendary, at the same time we're inventing something new for him as well. So it was a really interesting mix of opportunities there.
Wow. Daily provisions. My first experience with that was Glen Coben, who used to work at Rockwell many moons ago. He's like, "Oh, come check this out. It's really awesome." And we had a really great sit down in there.
It's so funny. The only time I've ever been nominated for a James Beard Award was for this little 400 square foot coffee shop. So you never know. Like, you know, every project is an opportunity, no matter how small.
It's a very, very special place. I mean, that place is just incredible. So as you're looking out and you're kind of seeing the landscape of where hospitality is going, and you're getting all these new inputs from your labs and just all the different silos within your company, how do you see what you do as far as design and creating the built environment? How is it changing, or how have you seen it change over your career as far as bringing people together as you define hospitality?
How have I seen it change?
Yeah.
Can you get a little more specific on that? Sorry.
Well, I mean, like when you started your career,
Yeah.
you know, you have all of these, you're building all of these spaces. Obviously, like people always want to come together. There's that root base, like people are coming together, right? But as guests become more aware of, oh, this is intentional, or this is like, there's this almost contrived thing. How have you seen that evolving? So it's like something totally different and new. How are you keeping it new?
Well, I think changeability, flexibility, day partying, those are all kind of integrated in every project we do. So you don't want to have a stale experience. You don't want to have something that, you know, you've been there once and you've been there, done that kind of thing. I think that's also why you see trends of like these pop-ups and immersive experiences and all this stuff that's, you know, obviously very relevant today. But I think it's really about diversity of experiences, getting people to come back. And you know, that's, for us, that's exciting. That's why, like, going back to the Noy House thing, that the idea that the chandeliers are set up high during the day, and at night they're on cranks and they lower down to be a different level during the day or during the night. So I think just those simple gestures we can do to change from day to night, you know, changes the mood of a space and makes it a different experience.
True. Super adaptable. And actually that's been a really, I forgot about those moving chandeliers, because if you think about so many of these, especially on the F&B side, it's so hard for a new innovative F&B place to do lunch well and then transition into dinner.
Yeah.
And it's all lighting and being able to change that. And I haven't seen many that have done it well.
Yeah. I think if the physical space can change in some way too, right? Beyond just the lighting levels, that's when to me it gets more exciting. You know, so like for Equinox Hotel, our entire bar can disguise itself during the day, and at night opens up to become a cocktail bar. So that during the day, you're not, you know, morning, you're not having coffee looking at a bar, those kind of things.
Wow. And then looking back at your career and where you are and all the studios that you're, and your leadership role at Rockwell right now, if you were to look back on your career I know we all have so many mentors, but is there anyone through your career that kind of stands out as like, oh, this person as a mentor changed the direction of my career?
I think I've been lucky in that I've had a lot of people that have kind of set my course. I've kind of a strange journey into how I ended up in hospitality in the first place. I mean, you know, my first job ever was at Skidmore in San Francisco, and doing high rises and things like that, and then moved into high-end retail, and then workplace, and then moved to Chicago, and I worked with Eva Maddox. She was a huge influence in my career, I think. So Eva was well known for branded environments, is what she trademarked essentially. So it was showrooms and spaces that spoke to the bigger brand ideas. And I think that's kind of the first place I ever kind of got exposed to really thinking about the human experience in a way deeper than just designing a space for something. And then I went and became a principal at studios based in DC, and then later in the New York office. And I think the CEO there, Todd DeGarmo, was a huge influence on kind of how do you manage people, and how do you kind of create studios that embrace creativity, and so I think, and obviously David Rockwell is a huge influence on me now. So super lucky to have him as a partner.
And okay, so then if you think about your experience with Eva and Todd and David, as far as these kind of larger than life teachers of yours, like in what way do you feel that, or what have you taken from them in essence to pay it forward and inspire and impact those people on your teams?
I mean, I think just always being grateful. I think we're all stressed out these days, right? And we're all at our wits' ends for lots of reasons. And I think, we're fortunate here at Rockwell to be super busy at the same time. And I think you just kind of every once in a while, you got to remember to just take a breath and say thank you. And, I think making sure people understand their value is really important, and something I'm always trying to be conscious of.
Gratitude and appreciation. It's like the two most important things. And oftentimes it's almost like for me, it's almost like I have to schedule time to remember to do that. Cause we all get so caught up in what we're doing. But I think that there's a way through, I guess, imparting gratitude and appreciation for others that we can all kind of like relax, recenter, but then also maintain intensity and drive and go forward. And it's a very delicate balance to do it.
It is, yeah.
So
it's super important.
And then how do you do it through with your teams that are, because now you have offices in Madrid, you have offices in New York, you got something going on in Los Angeles. Where are you guys growing into?
LA is fairly new. I think it's about 2 years old now. I oversee 3 studios in New York plus Madrid. So I have 4 studios I oversee. My partner Sean is similar in that he has 3 studios in New York plus LA that he oversees. And then David kind of floats above that and works in the theater world and product design. But I think, I'm very fortunate to have senior staff within all these studios that are really running the day-to-day, and it's a really good structure and great people to work with, and
Awesome. So I know that we've talked about theater a bunch. Do you ever get pulled into those theater projects?
Oh no, I wish I could, but that's David's baby. So
really?
I get to experience it peripherally with going seeing his tech rehearsals and things like that, but I never get to design any of that.
Okay, but then think about from a lot of the theater laboratory, if you will, and then David pushing the envelopes and just kind of innovating and inspiring. How many times can you recall any instances that you were inspired by something that he came up with on the theater side that informed a project that you were doing on the hospitality side?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously theater has a huge influence on our work. And I think it's not necessarily like, oh, I saw Kinky Boots and I'm going to take that and put it into a project, right? But I do think it's about being aware of your audience. I think, a dramatic theatrical space is something Rockwell is probably known for very well, right? And so, designing things like, I'm thinking about like Cathedral here in New York, which is this restaurant that has this huge kind of dramatic art installation in the middle. That was a very purposeful theatrical kind of space that we were creating. but I think it's
Is that in
all,
the Moxie East Village?
yeah, Moxie.
Oh, that
Yeah,
place
yeah.
is awesome. Oh yeah, okay.
It's we created this wire mesh sculpture that feels almost like a ghost structure above you. Yeah.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's like such a. I felt like I was walking into like Thunderdome when I was there. You know, it was like it was super cool. And just kind of underneath. Oh wow, that was.
Yeah.
I really love that place. Okay, so in a way, from that stage side, it's informing the theatrics of all the different things that you guys are doing in all of your
Sure.
studios,
I think it's also
and
about,
backwards.
yeah, it's also how do you tell a story, right? And
Mhm.
how does the audience receive that story? And, um, David just came out with a book, I think this past year about drama, right? So which is about how does theater and design, how do those worlds combine? So there's always conversations around that and sort of things to learn from him, obviously.
Mm. And then as you guys are, you know, paving a way forward and pathfinding in many ways, um, what's exciting you most about what you see in the future and your guys' path forward?
Oh, I think there's a sense of community that's kind of bubbling up these days with our work. And so whether, David's always been a huge advocate for participating in your community and being engaged. Things like during COVID, coming out with this idea of dining in the streets and how do we create sort of kit of parts that allows restaurants to quickly, be able to continue operating their businesses when it first started. But I think that's something that we're very conscious of and kind of looking for those opportunities to always participate in a bigger community spirit in some way.
Mhm.
I think we just came out last week or 2 weeks ago with a new one for public space here in the streets, where it's kind of creating these stoops where allows performances and things to happen in streets, public in the city here in New York. And then obviously we work with DIFA and all that kind of stuff. So I think that's something that to me is going to continue to be important, especially with everything else that's going on in the world right now. And how do we as a firm, participate at whatever level we can to help make good in the world, I think is something we want to continue to do.
And for many of those, are those initiatives as for the community building and reimagining, is that mostly pro bono, or do you guys get paid for that as well?
It's all pro bono, yeah.
Oh,
The ones
wow.
that we just talked about. Yeah, we do a lot of pro bono stuff.
Okay. And then thinking about building community on the streets as it with respect to dining,
Yeah.
I think one of the best silver linings out of COVID is just the move outward onto the streets for all these restaurants. Not only as an entrepreneur and be able to turn more tables, but also I think it's just bringing everyone back to the streets. Like, where do you see that going? Like, what are you hearing from the city?
Yeah.
And like,
Yeah.
is it going to stay? Is it going to be reimagined? Or are they like, what are you seeing?
Well, my understanding is it is staying, and to me,
Right.
it's very exciting. Working in Madrid, I'm usually there once a month or so, and that city historically has been a city where dining in the plazas and on the streets is a very common thing, right? And there's an energy you get from that you don't get from a traditional city where everything's inside. So I love that it's kind of transformed the city in some ways. Obviously, I think there's the next phase, I think, in this is how do you start to maybe create a little more I don't know how you say consistency in the quality of the structures and whatnot, right?
And
But
safety.
right. So I think that's probably the next effort, but I think at the same time it's really opened up the city in a way that had never been before.
And do you have any favorites as far as what you've seen out there as far as the push to outside
Yeah.
that you were either involved in or not involved in? You can be a fan. It doesn't have to be a project of yours, or it can
Sure.
be.
Yeah. No, I think one that sticks out in my mind, it's right next to my house, is the Empire Diner in Chelsea. They did an amazing job with kind of really building a great structure outside, has everything from sound system to ceiling fans and whatnot, but it's really well designed. And there's obviously more than that too, but I think I love to see when people when they're going to do it, they're going to do it right.
Yeah, and that's been such a fixture forever. I remember when my kids were little, we lived on 20th Street. I'd always bring them to that Seal Park right next to it.
Yeah.
Go inside, get some coffee or a little bite to eat. But
Great place.
Yeah, and it's not like it's like just a neighborhood place that it
Yeah,
kind of just reinvented by what they did outside.
yeah, yeah. It's got a nice
Huh.
energy. Yeah.
Totally. Okay, so there's a lot of exciting things out there that are happening. What's keeping you up at night? What
Um, what's keeping me up at night? I would say really about the fragility of everyone right now, right? And that how do I create a space that allows them to flourish with putting creativity front and forward when there's so many things that could be additional stresses outside of the job itself, right? And so I think that's, we're all learning to how do you balance work with life a little better these days. I think the idea that you're not in the office 5 days a week anymore, which is great. So having that flexibility, but at the same time making sure that we're still outputting the best work we can, right? And so that kind of keeps me up at night, I think, is like, how do I still harness the same energy and inspiration in a world that maybe isn't as inspiring every day?
Okay, so can you think of a recent example of how you were able to find that balance
Oh gosh.
of doing that?
Specific. Uh, no, I think I would say, when we're together in the office, I would say it's easier, right? When you're trying to come up with new ideas via Zoom, it's a little more challenging than when you're around the table together, right? Um, I think there's also just different types of exchange you have when you're in person. So while I think the flexibility is important, at the same time, I think being back in the studio probably produces our best work.
Because of that collaboration and kind of free flow
Yeah,
thought.
yeah, you just get a different energy, right? You can bounce things off each other differently, and I think and also just sort of random things happen, right? So when you're remote, you have to have a Zoom call or a Teams call. It's purposeful, right? And I want to address one thing. When you're in the studio, I walk by someone's desk and say, hey, what are you working on? And something might happen from that. That wasn't just a, hey, I need to talk to X, Y, and Z about something, right? So I think that random opportunities of ideas they happen much easier in studio.
Yeah, I don't know if we're ever going to get back to the full 5 day a week thing. Who knows?
Yeah.
But I do think those unscripted collisions, if you will, were that happen, making a cup of coffee or at the water cooler, the proverbial water cooler. I think it's just sorely missed, and it's so many missed opportunities
I think
because
also, like,
that's just not happening.
yeah, I also think, when you're on a project that might be specific, I don't know, let's just say it's a restaurant project, you might be working with just architects and interior designers. But you're in the studio and you're walking around, you might run into a tech person or an industrial designer or whatever it might be, right? And so again, that's those collisions of grabbing a coffee and saying, hey, what are you doing? It's a different thing than if you're just working on a project and a specific team, a small team. So
Mm. Um, Specifically in I think you call it the labs. Is it the labs
the lab,
department?
the
The
lab.
lab, the lab. Okay. In the lab, they're like cutting edge, they're messing with technology.
Yeah.
And how often do they have some kind of a breakthrough or come up with some kind of a new idea and then turn it back and like educate everyone in the office?
So it's kind of interesting how we work with the lab. There's kind of two scenarios. So one is we might be doing a project and we come up with some crazy idea that needs sort of a technology component to it. And so then we bring in our lab to say, okay, here's what we're thinking. This sounds crazy, but then they come back and kind of think through a lot of different solutions. The other way that happens is that the lab might get hired specifically for a technology project, which happens a lot of times, but then they need sort of an architecture and interior design support to bring it to fruition. So it's kind of two channels, I guess, that happens that way. But to me, the most exciting one is when we kind of come up with some crazy idea that we need a solution for and bring them into the fold. So it's not like they're sitting around tinkering with new technology, then say, I don't know what to do with this. Let's figure this out. It's more purposeful, I would say.
Mm.
But really interesting group of people. I think we have like
And
25 people there. Yeah.
that's so amazing and so unique because I don't know very many firms that have like an R&D
Yeah.
lab within them. So if you think about when you like, what's a harebrained idea that either you or one of your studios came up with that you're like, oh, it's this pie in the sky. Hey, let's bring these guys in. What's something that they executed really well on?
I'm trying to think. Well, one that's I can sort of talk about was this idea that we were working for a very large bank, international bank, and it's for their headquarters. And they wanted us to do their lobby, right? So they hired us for a lobby project. And that was it. They had no vision for anything beyond, they just wanted a beautiful lobby. And so we started working on it. And the way we start thinking is like, okay, so what's the opportunity here, right? What's beyond just a lobby? Like anybody can do a lobby. Like, how are we gonna twist this a little bit to make it more interesting? And we started thinking about sort of the idea of the role of the bank in the community. And they had a grant program that was about every year they would give a certain amount of money to local charities or efforts. And but it was kind of a disconnected thing. I don't think people understood that the bank was doing this as their foundation. So we decided to make the lobby a community space that was about the community deciding where the money went. So we created a digital wishing well. And so the whole idea was that the community could come into the lobby space and essentially make a wish, and from the make a wish, they would come up at the end of the year with where the money should go. So cool idea. And then we said, okay, now how are we going to do this? And so that was bringing the lab in, and we started talking about this and came up with this really cool idea of essentially a pool of water that has these iPads in front of it, and you can make a wish from the iPad, and you fling the wish off the iPad, and there's activators in the water that make it look like it's skipping through the water, and then ultimately goes into this giant crystal space that then ultimately churns out at the end of the year where the money goes.
Oh my God, that sounds amazing. So it's like crowdsourced impact and share. Oh, wow.
So I think that's an idea of like how we take something that's maybe a very traditional project and just twist it a little bit to make it a more meaningful, interesting, experiential kind of space.
Is that open yet?
No. So that's under construction, but yeah.
Okay, so I'll have to come back to you and hear about where that is, because I would love to see that in action. And it's so amazing that you can have these super creative and capable executors of technology and ideas that it's like this symbiotic, like no idea is too crazy.
Yeah. And I think it's really exciting, especially when you have the people in the lab that can think big like that and do something great. Yeah,
totally. And then within the lab itself, what's an example of some like real innovative envelope pushing project that they've done? Because I'm mostly paying attention to all the hospitality stuff. I'm not aware of that, but like share that with me.
So there's a one that just opened up recently is Aluminairium, which is we've all sort of been to these immersive digital environments, I'm sure, where you're surrounded by video and sound. This is kind of taking it one step further in that the lab, ultimately it's a company that's now been spun off from Rockwell called Aluminairium, but there's first ones in Vegas right now at Area 15. And there's one under construction. There's one in Atlanta as well. That was the first one. But they're immersive spaces, but the content is live film. And so the first one was a safari where they actually went to Africa and filmed safaris in super high def. And so you're surrounded by these sort of 2-story high high-res digital projections with localized sounds. So if you're standing at one end of the room next to the elephant, you might hear it there, or at the other end, the grass is moving and you hear it there. But everything's projected, floor, walls, and it's a true like kind of high def experiential thing. I think they're doing the next one is space, and anyway, there's lots of.
And how many people can be in there at once?
I don't know the actual occupancy. It's big though. It's like hundreds, right?
Hundreds. Oh, wow. And depending on where you are, it's audio different, visually different. Exactly. Oh my God, I want to check that out. We'll put that in the show notes so that people can check it out. That sounds It sounds so cool, but it's also just, I don't know, like I feel like as people are trying to create these new built environments and push the envelope, there's so many places that just, actually, I would say most places do not have that level of capability. So like when you have a new
or budget
or right, or budget. Okay, so that goes back to client selection. But when you have, like when you hire a junior teammate, right, who's coming on, and then are their minds just blown away when they get to experience that?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously when people come on, I think you kind of start them off slow, right? You're not just like throwing them in and saying, okay, figure this out. But I do think it's an inspiring place in that you know, while you may be working on a restaurant project, your first project coming in, at the end of the day, seeing all these other things happening, obviously piques your interest and whatnot. But I do think also at the same time, we do like to throw people in the deep end a little bit. And this is a place where the people that thrive here are not afraid of things, right? So being thrown into something that you don't know what you're doing, the personality that finds that exciting is who succeeds most here. And so I think it's for me, it's a I love that. I love being challenged with different things, whether it's different typologies or, you know, learning about different cultures because your projects are in places you've never been. I think that's when it's exciting. I don't ever want to do just another one of those, right? I don't want to do a repeat. I always want to push.
Well, I also love like getting a new teammate in and kind of throwing them into the deep end, so to speak. I think that oftentimes that doesn't have, like, there's like a rite of passage you have to kind of go up. But I do find that when you do throw someone into the deep end who is new, they also bring fresh and new perspective and like a clear lens. And it might not be the right outcome always. Sometimes it is, but it always gives new perspective. And I think we all could have those rookie smarts more, and just be able to tap into that kind of unbiased, unvarnished, unprejudiced kind of perspective and new and creative thinking.
I think it's also why we hire from a diverse group of people, their backgrounds. It's not just hospitality designers we're hiring, right? So, you know, some of the most successful people have come from backgrounds that weren't traditional hospitality design. In fact, I think one of my strong leaders here in my studio and one of the studios here in New York, you know, came and asked me for a job. He had no design background, never went to school for design, and was doing photo editing for a photographer. And he said, I can come and do Photoshop for you. And I said, oh, I don't know if I could hire you just to do Photoshop. And he's like, how about I just come work for free for a week and see what you think? And I said, well, I can do that, but I will bring you on temporarily just to see what you can do. And, you know, that was a number of years ago, and he has been amazing. He self-taught himself design, and now is probably one of my most successful interior designers in the studio. And he's become a director, in fact. So I think that's the personality that really works here, is somebody that's super motivated, obviously inherently talented, but able to, like, you know, self-teach themselves. And you know, my job there was just to give him the opportunities and to give him the learning experiences and mentorship that he needed, but at the same time, you know, don't hold him back, right?
Totally. That's amazing. And I'm sure, like, how many people are working there now?
270.
Oh my God. Through all the different studios.
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. That's amazing. But I can imagine, of the 270 and the new people joining, it really must be such a varied group of experiences that are coming in, because like you guys are really pushing the envelope on so many different projects. It's awesome. And I don't know if I've ever seen you do the same thing twice.
Hope not. Yeah, but of the 270, I mean, you got to think, we're also, you know, the reason we have studios is that we're conscious that, one, we don't want a big corporate firm, you know, we're not structured that way. But having the studios kind of allows you that smaller group creative energy, collaborative spirit. So each studio is around between, I don't know, 20 to 40 people kind of thing. And that sort of allows you to feel like you have a home that's tight within the larger structure, but you have the support of a big firm, right? So we have our internal PR department, we have our internal legal and all that kind of stuff, right? That helps us run as a sophisticated large firm, but at the same time, it feels very easy and collaborative.
Yeah. Wow. I'm not familiar with Eva, who you mentioned, Eva Maddox, I believe.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Eva Maddox. So what exactly would they do there? Because I'm intrigued, because I think you said it was about building out brand spaces.
She trademarked the idea of the concept of branded environments.
That's it.
Yeah, so she back in the, I mean, she's since I think now semi-retired, but the firm was bought by Perkins and Will, as many firms were.
As many were.
But she was sort of legendary in the business for really kind of taking brands and manifesting it into built space, right? So she was doing like the Steelcase showrooms at Neocon and all that kind of stuff, and really became sort of iconic in the design world for branded spaces.
Because the reason why it resonated, it had to do with building these branded environments. Okay, so for showroom, a couple of weeks ago, I was talking to Aaron Richter, and you mentioned the Equinox Hotel.
Sure.
And okay, Equinox has like a vision, like from all their studios where you work out. But then as they transition in the hotel, and there are a handful of brands that have transitioned to the hospitality space. But I'm always surprised, like, why do you think more have not? Because to me, it's the ultimate immersion, if you will, in a brand. Because like if you're in a hotel or eating in there, you're like ingesting it, you're breathing it, you're sleeping there. I don't know why why haven't more brands kind of taken that approach on the hospitality side, do you think?
I mean, I think, you have to have the connection. So, we've been lucky at Rockwell to be able to take a lot of brands to the hotel side. So, Nobu as an example, right? We worked for Nobu for 30 years, designing restaurants. And, when they want to transition into the hotel world, we worked on that strategy and then ultimately opened their first one for them, and many more since. But it was an easy connection, right? And that food is an essential part of hospitality, and that service was, and so the leap to a hotel is not that giant of a leap, and it made sense. I think similarly with Equinox, right? It's a lifestyle. It's a place that, obviously health and wellness was a key pillar, but at the same time, sort of this social class and things like that they really kind of represented. So again, it wasn't a huge jump, but I think, those make sense to me. I think there's others that may be more challenging just because they don't have that direct connection.
And maybe it has, maybe it has something to do with just, and talking to Aaron, I remember with Equinox in particular, like, I think he used the word like tribe, like they had a very specific, like follow and like a fanatical following. And I would assume that's the same with Nobu. Everyone whoever eats there freaking loves it, and they're going back and back and back and back. But like it's not meant for everyone. It's a super tight demographic. So maybe that's why it is. But I'm sure that there are so many more brands out there that could build out and deliver this totally immersive experience. To me, it's just a mystery. Like, I don't know why. There's a lot of brands that have rabid followings, but like, I don't know why they're not taking that next step.
There you go. Entrepreneurial opportunity there.
Yeah. Hey, raving brand. Hey, Johnny Ive, let's make an Apple hotel. I don't even know how to start that conversation, but it's kind of it's a cool idea. Like, and I think maybe we just haven't gotten there yet. It's also very
it's a crowded market too, right? I mean, there's a lot of people doing this, and so I think you have to have a real strong passion for it and reason to do it.
So thinking about the 270 colleagues that you have, the really kind of envelope pushing projects that you have going all over the world, all the all the careers that have started at Rockwell, gone other places, the diaspora, and then the many who have all come back.
Yeah.
It's like there's a really cool recipe that you guys have going on. And when you think about like this this catalog of work and the amazing people, like what's exciting you most about where you all are heading?
Hmm. I think for me, I think it's the ability to have a global impact, number one. Our work is all around the world. I think, you know, it's exciting to have a group of people here that are always challenging me, and I think every day is kind of a new day because of that, and it pushes me to think different. Um, Also, I think, for me, working with Madrid, there's a different point of view on design and how they see the world. And so to be able to experience that, it's exciting for me as well. Um, but I don't know, I just go back to the same kind of idea that, designing for joy is probably my that's kind of where I am focused at right now in my life, is like, I want to make places that bring people together to experience joy. And I think we all need a little bit of that right now. And yeah.
I think it also, that idea of joy and building spaces to spread joy, it, in a way, it ties so succinctly into the idea of gratitude and appreciation, right? I think it's like this joy, gratitude, appreciation. It is this Venn diagram
Yeah.
of amazingness. And I think that's kind of like why we all do what we do, right? Because we do in everything we do. It doesn't matter what you do, but if you can tie all three of those things together, you can really figure out why you're doing it and impact a ton of people.
Exactly. Yeah, I think it's why, we always approach a project thinking about at the end user at the end of the day. It's not about, we don't design by Pinterest. We're not designing a space just to make it pretty, right? We're always starting with a bigger idea. And I think that's an important thing to be able to get the outcome of what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
It's beyond just like, should it be blue or should it be red, right? It's a bigger idea. Yeah.
So everyone, in one of our alignment calls, in our alignment call, Greg shared with me that he grew up on a farm in north of Indianapolis in Indiana, and then you went off to college, right?
Yep. In
Okay,
Indiana as well.
in
Yeah.
Indiana.
Yeah.
Where?
Ball State.
Oh, that's right, Ball State, the Jars. David Letterman. Um,
The Jars.
yeah, the Jars, ball jars. If you, the Greg that I'm speaking to right now, went back to the 18-year-old Greg entering Ball State, like, what advice do you have for yourself?
Hmm. Um, I think at the end of the day, just always be nimble, always be open. Um, never say no in some ways. Just because I think it's about, experiencing lots of different things in your life to kind of find what is going to make you the most fulfilled. I think my journey through my career and my life, I've been blessed in that I've had lots of different experiences to ultimately land me in a spot where I was in the hospitality world. I find it the most rewarding sector, if you want to call it, design wise. But I think unless you're nimble and open to following your gut in some ways, you won't ever find that. So
Just say yes.
just say yes.
I love it. So Greg, if people want to learn more about you or Rockwell, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, you can email me, gkeffer@rockwellgroup.com.
Cool. And then we'll put up the Rockwell's website and all that good stuff. Well, I think what I took away the most from this conversation is that idea, and it's coming up in so many of the conversations. It's that Venn diagram of gratitude, appreciation, and joy, and it really helping us figure out why we're doing what we're doing, because it applies to everything. Thank you for framing it up that way, because I love that visual. So I want to say thank you, Greg, and I'm grateful and appreciative that we were able to spend this time together. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. This is fun.
Yeah, I loved it. It was so awesome. Now I just think I figured out a logo for the book. So, but I also want to thank our listeners, because as I was telling you before, like, we keep growing every single week. It's awesome. I'm humbled, but I think most of it has to do with these amazing guests like yourself, Greg, who are just coming on and sharing their experience and impacting others and shortening other people's journeys. So if this has changed anyone's thinking on hospitality or working or careers, please share it. It's all word of mouth. We're very grateful, and we'll all see you next time. Thank you so much.